Right guys, welcome back to the part 2 of the tutorial. What we're going to do in this section is create controls for our bones. The reason we have controls for animators is to make it easy to animate. Of course, looking at this, it's been a bit annoying selecting the bones inside of the model. Imagine having to do that every time you have to animate, especially on something much more complicated such as characters. So what we do is we create a visual standpoint which also controls the bones, and it makes it easier to select, makes it better and easier for the animator to animate. So what we're going to do is start off with a shape, and what we're going to use is a circle, and what we're going to say is that this is the main control in the center. Give me that big, and what you can do is find that in the create tab, go to shapes and create a circle. I'm going to go to the Modifier tab. I'm going to click Rendering, open this up. Then I'm going to click Enable in Renderer and Enable in Viewport. What that does is make it a lot bigger. I'm going to change the color of it just to make it a bit more nice to look at. There we go. And this will be the main control, which will move the whole suitcase. If you want the suitcase to jump around, it depends on how you want it to animate it. Of course, the better the rig, the more options a rig has, the better it is to animate. It obviously depends on the purpose as well. So if you are rigging a model, make sure that you understand what it's being animated for. Whereas for now, I'm just going to show you the basics. I'm just going to say this is the main root bone. The suitcase isn't going to move much, it's just going to open up. So this control is going to control the main root bone here. And what I need to do, or what I will do, is I'm going to select everything but the bones. So I'm going to select all the bones actually here and the circle. So what you can do is click the top one, hold on shift, click the bottom bone, and that selects all of the in-between as well. Hold on control and click circle, and that's clicked the circle with our selection as well. Then again click control shift I, and what that does is it inverts our selection here. And what we do is right click on the screen in the viewport and click free selection. Now I cannot select this model at all. This makes it much easier to rig. It means we're not going to mess with the model too much, and it's going to make it easier for us to rig our bones. If you wanted to, you could also, if I go back, Control Z, if I wanted to, I could also X-ray it and then freeze it so that we can see the bones inside. It depends on how you want to do it. So we got our bone structure set up here. So this is going to open up. These are going to open up here. Sorry, a bit used to the Maya controls. Open up, and then the top bit's going to fly open. Okay. So something which I realized which is a problem, just to be careful of. And it's actually real good that we got this problem now. I realized that I didn't actually make this bone rotate with this section here. So what we did for the front, we will have to do for the back now. The reason this is good that we run into this problem now is because we might say this is a problem that these are still attached to this. So if I move this into position, it's also going to mess with the position of these flat bits here as well, which we don't want to mess with. Just show you how we can fix that. So what I can do is click this bone, select the two flaps. I'm going to drag them out into this open space down here. What that does is that unparents the top bits to these flaps, meaning I can rotate this and it won't affect the flaps now. I'm going to do the same thing for the top and make that its own bone. And then what I can do now is move that bone. So what I can do, because I know that these are separate objects, what I can do is right click, unfreeze all, and what I'm going to do is actually use this as a guidance for this top bone here. So because we named it properly here, it's going to be easy to find this bone. I'm going to select it, hold on Alt A, select this section here, and click OK, and then I'm going to move this back to the center. If you wanted to, you can also use these values down near the axis values, and if you right click on the arrow, it will set it to 0. Hold on left click, move it up, move it positive on the x-axis, move it down, negative on the x-axis. I'm just going to right click the arrows, it will set it to 0 as default. Okay, so that problem sorted. I'm going to attach the flaps back to the top bit, then attach the top to the root bone, the bottom root. That should now be sorted. Let's just have a go and get a visual look at this. It should be okay. So now to finish off the control rig. What we're going to do is we're going to select this circle here. I now want to have a circle which controls the top of the case. I'm going to hold on shift and drag and create a copy. I'm then going to make sure that these are now once again set to frozen. So let's just touch everything or select everything, sorry. Control Shift I, reselection. Hold on Alt A, and what we're going to do is align this. So this is where this becomes very important. What we need is that we need the local orientation to be perfect because we're going to be rotating using this circle. So what I'm going to do is make sure that this circle is now perfectly aligned with this section here. If you want to, you can still mess with the shape of this or the size. If you want to have this here, then you can. We can even change the settings still if you want it a bit thicker, and that's fine. For me, I kind of want it going up. It's just be a bit easier to select for me. So we can't fix this by rotating this. The reason for that is this will get shown later on in the tutorial, but if we go to animation, constraints, and orientation constraints, so like this, it now has messed with our bone. If I move that back into position, so Control Z, and show you what happens now that we've fixed this, animation constraints, orientation constraints, it has now not affected our bone. It's perfect. So the way we can affect this control to be in a bit more desirable position or rotation is by right clicking the control, converting to edit poly. If you would prefer, sometimes people prefer to add an edit poly modifier. I'm then going to just click element mode, select this model here, the control, and then rotate it 90 degrees. If you don't know how much you rotation by, it'll be at the bottom down here. So if you look at the x-axis, it is 85. I want to move that to 90. Come off element mode. That will not have affected the pivot's orientation. So now if I select the circle, hold on Alt and press A, and select this top bone here, you'll see with these ticked, make sure these are ticked, you'll see that it does not affect the top bit anymore, and that is very important when it comes to creating new controls for your rig. So if I now animate constraint, orientation constraint, that it is now in position, there's no problems with it. I'm going to Control Z, and we'll get to that bit after. There we go. So now what we want is two more controls. We want two flaps at the front, so I'm going to create another copy, make it a bit smaller. Hold on Alt A, I'm going to align it to this section here. What I want is the position as well, so the top bit. Once again, if you want to make it a bit more rotated like this rather than like this, best way to do it is once again going to element mode, rotating it on the x-axis. For me, it's the x-axis, and then leaving it there, and that will not mess with the pivot orientation. So I'm going to grab that, drag out, Alt A, select this bone, and that should be fine. So, going to change the color of these so I know what I'm looking at. So change that one to green, maybe these ones to like a red. Soon a bit bright and noticeable. There you go, that's our control. So, what's next is I would like to now start thinking about the hierarchy for the controls as well. So if I move this, it should also control this, and when I move this, it should also control these two here. So once again, let's name this. So let's call this root underscore. Actually, no, let's start with ctrl underscore root. ctrl underscore top. ctrl underscore right underscore flap. ctrl underscore left underscore flap. Put this one right. Okay, just make sure these are named as you like it to. Yeah, and that they align with the bones, it'll make it a bit more easy when it comes to rigging, especially when it comes to complex rigs such as characters. Yeah, there we go. So now, what we need to do is create the hierarchy for this. So I'm going to start off with the top bits. I'm going to drag that onto root, and then I'm going to select the two flaps. So if you select one, press and hold shift, or hold on control, click the top one, drag that to top, and now if I move root, it will move the others as aligned, or rotating this one, or rotate those as well. So that is now the control section sorted. What we're going to do now is sort out our constraints. This is where it could be a bit complex to understand, but from how we've set this out and some of the problems we've run into and have fixed, you should be fine with creating your constraints without any problems. So you can start off with the bottom bits. What this is going to be is our movement and rotation for this control here. So what I'm going to do is select the bottom bone. I'm going to click animation, constraints, orientation constraints, and you'll get this little dotted line. What you want to do is now select the control, which will be controlling that bone. Okay, so that wasn't aligned properly, so now what I'm going to do is go back, take the top bit out, click root, hold on Alt and tap A, align this properly, yeah, that's fine. And then if I wanted to add the edit poly, there's always problems when it comes to rigging. Not everything goes perfectly to plan. A lot of times you do have to fix a lot of the problems, unfortunately. I'm going to put that to there, that's fine. Element mode, and I'm happy with that. Click on this bottom bone, once again, animation constraint, orientation constraint, select this, there should now not be any problems. So now, whenever I rotate this, it has constrained this bone to only rotate with this section here. As you can see, if I select this bone and rotate, it cannot do it. However, you do get some controls here and how much this control affects this bone here. So now that's done, I also know that I want this bone, or this control, sorry, to move this bone as well around as well. So if I move this, you see there'd be no problem, but if I rotate it, it's still constrained properly. So I'm going to do is select the bone here. I'm going to go to animation, constraints. I'm going to have position constraints and select the control. This now will allow me to set the position of the bone. Yeah, so I can't move this bone around at all anymore. You can have multiple constraints on one item or one mesh or one bone. What I did want is to be able to orientate / rotate and move this control for the suitcase to move and rotate. You can also set it to scale as well if you want to go a bit more deeper into rigging. So now that's done, I realized that this was not attached, so I'm going to drag this back to my root. That's back on. Yeah, that's fine. What I do know is that if I rotate this, we're still not getting this to rotate, so I'm going to click this bone, animate constraint, orientation constraint, and let's do an orientation constraint on this control here, the top control. What I do not want to do now is a position constraint. The reason for that is I don't think I want my rig to move off of this this top bit here. If you do want that, and say your animation this flies off the bottom bit, then maybe you do want to add a position constraint onto that. But now, if I rotate this here, it's completely fine. Click this one, rotate, then rotate this. It seems fine, and it looks like it's going to do what I want it to do. Of course, sometimes it's hard to tell until you've skinned your mesh to your rig. Just to finish off, what we're going to do is add orientation constraints for the flaps as well to their corresponding controls. So look at that, animation constraint, orientation, click this, and that should now be the end of our rig. So if I select everything, all the bones, sometimes there's problems with the marks, all the bones and the controls, and then I'm just going to isolate it this time. Now we will see that everything looks like it should work as intended. Yeah, that's fine. We can rotate this, we can also move the bottom bit. So I'm going to Control Z, make sure everything goes back into position after you've tested it, please. To un-isolate, you can just click this button down here, make sure it's not highlighted blue. You can also press Alt and Q. So, yeah, that's the end of that section. So what we've done is we have created a control rig, and we have also constrained our bones to the corresponding controls. This should be set up nicely, ready for skinning in the next part.